Hello, everyone. Welcome to our conversation about unnatural resources. My name is Amy Lehman, and I'm Mindy Uhrlaub's cousin. And I'm going to do a little introduction, sort of set the scene of what our plan is for this evening, and also to let you know how to ask questions when we do the Q&A at the towards the midpoint of the presentation. So welcome. I want to thank Barbara's Bookstore for hosting this event. I also want to draw everyone's attention to the fact that you can get your copy of Unnatural Resources. If you look at the green bar below, it says get your copy 10% off, use code event. So if you press there, you can get your copy of the book if you don't already have one. So thanks again to Barbara's for hosting us and for helping us with all this technology. I'd like to introduce Mindy, and so I'm going to read a little bit of her bio, and then we'll move on from there. So Mindy has traveled twice with Human Rights Watch and Eve Ensler's V-Day to the Democratic Republic of the Congo and has taken testimony of rape survivors and child soldiers. Her interest in preventing the pillage of resources in Congo has also led her to visit Virunga National Park and to sit on the committee for Human Rights Watch's Voices for Justice dinner. Prior to writing Unnatural Resources, Mindy wrote and produced Stalled, a feature-length film distributed by Concord New Horizons. She was also a music reviewer and a copy editor for Denver's Pulp magazine. In addition, Mindy plays keyboards in 40th Day. She's a rock star and an author, a band that has toured with Kansas and performed with groups like the Smashing Pumpkins. She is a contributing author in the anthologies Mama's Right and She's Got This, named the 2019 Forward Indies Book of the Year finalist, Kindle Book Awards Reader's Choice, and Best Book Awards finalist. She has spoken several times at San Francisco's Litquake and lives in the Bay Area with her husband and her sons.
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction.
My pleasure. So Mindy and I prepared for this event a little bit by talking about some of the themes in the book. And because we're in the week where International Women's Day falls and we're kind of in International Women's Month, year, millennium, whatever, we decided we'd like to focus some of our conversations around the themes around women's relationships and women's issues that appear throughout the book. And so I asked Mindy if she would choose a passage in the book that she felt highlighted some of these kinds of themes, and if she would read that for us, and that after she reads the passage, we'll be able to kind of get into a deeper discussion.
Thank you. And what a treat to be here. Thank you so much, Barbara's Bookstore. Thank you for Amy, to Amy for joining us. So I'll just set up this scene for y'all. In this scene, Therese, who's our 11-year-old hero of the story, has recovered from being raped by a militia group during an attack on her home. Because there are no other survivors from her town, she's been moved from the hospital to a women's shelter at a farm called Brianna's Village. She does not want to be there because she believes that her mama and her brother Felix are still alive, and she wants to go looking for them. She's been sort of mercilessly teased by another young mother named Wamini, and she has a not so close relationship with Olivia, the woman who runs Brianna's Village. She wants out, but she doesn't understand that this place is actually the safest option for a temporary home for her. In fact, the day prior to this scene, Therese ran away from Brianna's Village. only to get caught in a huge rainstorm that now seems to never end. So here's the excerpt. Okay. The storm continued for days. As angry as she was to be back, Therese was glad to have a dry place to sleep. The outhouse at Olivia's home was very traditional, and when she went to use it in the rain, her feet slipped around in the mud. She held the grab bar and steadied herself over the hole as water dripped on the back of her neck. If the outhouse leaked, it was still not as bad as a bedroom leaking. It was not as bad as being out in the rainstorm. I am lucky, Therese told herself. The mood at Brianna's village was very poor. The corn that they planted got too much rain and was ruined for the harvest. Supplies from the city were delayed because the road was washed out. Therese felt like a caged animal. She had been drawing water for Olivia, and her back was always sore. She had a cramping like an upset stomach that moved from her low belly to her back. Therese used the pit toilet, and a new smell hit her. It was metallic, like rain, and rich, like butter. Her first period. She did not know what to do, and then remembered the folded strips of fabric that had been placed on her mattress on her first day in Olivia's room. Therese sloshed through the mud back to her room. She felt swollen between her legs, and her whole body was sweaty. She made a little ball out of the fabric and tucked it into her underwear. Olivia walked in and lifted her chin at Therese. You've become a woman today? She asked. Therese was nervous about that smell, and now she was ashamed, but Olivia was the closest thing she had to a mama, and Therese didn't know who else she could talk to, so she said yes. She'd gotten her first period, and Olivia smiled. Congratulations, and be careful, she warned. Even though you feel like a child, everyone will think you're an adult. You'll have to behave like one now. Therese thought Olivia would tell her something else, but instead she unlocked the small suitcase next to her bed. Inside, Therese saw pink and blue boxes. Olivia hunched over the suitcase, blocking her view. When she turned around, she held out a small plastic package to Therese. She opened it and found what she learned was a maxi pad. Olivia showed her how it worked and told her it was their secret. Therese would need to throw it away when nobody else was watching. That was the one Western gift aside from money that Olivia accepted from her donors each month. Everyone else at the village used old fabric and had to wash it in the river, but Olivia had her special supplies, and now Therese did too. Thank you.
Thanks, Mindy. So my first question for you is, why was it important for you to write about a female protagonist? There are a lot of other minor characters in the book, but really the book focuses around two women in particular.
Yeah, I mean, women's issues in Congo are pretty complicated, as you know. You know, there are hundreds of thousands of women in Congo who have been raped at the hands of militia, and violence against women is terrible in Congo. You know, I know that there's a humanitarian tragedy in Congo that is almost disproportionate to other humanitarian tragedies. But for women, it's especially hard. You know, they don't typically own land. I think land rights are typically given to men. I believe that a lot of girls are not educated there, and they can't really catch a break there. You know, in my experience, when you read numbers like 500,000 women raped in Congo, you know, your eyes kind of glaze over. And for me, I wanted to put a face on a successful woman. And for me to write a story about a successful woman was important, but like, then there was a greater question of how does a woman become successful? And she learns from other successful women. And so her mother has this sort of gritty determination to educate her and her brother equally. And I had a mom who was a language teacher, and she really wanted to educate me in languages, and I don't know, I guess I had to give, my mom a nod, and I had to give the women of Congo a nod. When I was there, I met women with incredible resilience, and women who had been tortured and raped and dragged through the woods, and I just I just wanted to write a female forward book. And um I don't know, I hope that I've created a female protagonist from Congo who can be, I don't know, a good role model for other girls there. I hope. Um, I don't know. Am I allowed to tennis ball this back to you and ask
Oh.
you about? So, I mean, what is so as you probably can read in the chat, Dr. Lehman, Amy, is she's sort of an expert on health issues in Congo, and so um, what kinds of things do you see with the Lake Tanganyika Floating Health Clinic? What kinds of things do you see in Congo with women's issues, especially?
Um, I would say that there's a kind of general context, right, of lack of female empowerment, let's say.
Right.
Um, you know, uh, many sub-Saharan African societies and societies in other parts of the globe, do not place women's rights at the core of the framing of issues. But at the same time, I have personally worked with a number of incredibly smart, resilient, funny women as community health workers, as midwives, as nurses. And I would say that even in the context of a kind of diminished, women's rights and these episodes of enormous violence that have befallen lots of communities and particularly women, uh, in this context of kind of war and post-conflict, you still find so many women who are, prepared to make the most of whatever it is that they have, who are really committed to the betterment of their children, who are prepared to work incredibly hard and sacrifice in order to sort of make things better and move things along, for their children and for, in particular, their daughters. So it's a complicated place, where, sort of there are a lot of examples of, terrible, oppression and violence, as well as kind of empowerment and optimism.
Right. And we were talking earlier about how in order to work in Congo and do any sort of relief work or any sort of advocacy around Congo, you have to be sort of an optimist, don't you?
You sure do. My friend, the psychiatrist, says I'm a pathological optimist. So
Well,
I
yeah.
have a question for you. Knowing that you've met these kind of resilient, women, why a work of fiction instead of a work of nonfiction? Why invent a story rather than choose particular women that you met and highlight them in a memoir nonfiction capacity?
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting thing. I am currently working on a memoir, but we'll talk about that later. This is it's a totally different kind of memoir about grit and determination. But like, I didn't want to insert myself into that book. I wanted to highlight women's strength in Congo, but I didn't feel comfortable naming names. Like, it really, um, a friend of mine who shall remain nameless, who a, a woman who was brutally tortured, whose husband was killed, whose daughters were raped, and who started her own women's shelter was poisoned a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Because not because anyone harbored any bad feelings about her personally. It was just because of the work she did.
Mhm.
And I think that it really, I was scared. I was scared to say, this organization is doing this and these are the people that are doing it. I mean, some of my friends there got kicked out of Congo. They can't ever go back. I guess they can go back now, but I think that it's dicey. It's not like I think that Bosco Ntaganda is going to come and cut off my hands or something here in the U.S. But it's a scary place, and I didn't want to endanger any of the people that I knew there.
Mm-hmm. We have a Kimberly who said that she felt like making it fiction gave the characters the faces of many. So thank you for your
Thank you for that
comment.
Yeah.
And so how do you think now that the book is complete? How do you think about next steps, about how you would want to continue to engage on, issues related to the Congo moving forward?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, right now, the first year, they say that, when your book comes out, the first year is all about marketing. And I am just learning how to do that right now, as you
So
can
let's
see.
pause for a second and say, everybody, click on the green bar. And
Yes, I will drink to that. So, yes, green button, people. So um so anyway, yeah, I think that for me, really just getting the word out is what's the important thing now. And the book came out in October, and I'm thinking I've got another 6 months or so of like, I'm on tour right now. I don't know if you can tell. I'm wearing a fancy necklace because I'm on a book tour, but I'm actually still in my own office. Um, so I think I'm going to be doing this a little bit and kind of see what happens. Um, I don't feel a need to go back to Congo the way that you go back to Congo. I'm not currently working there, but I really, really want this film to be made. I want this book to be made into a film. I think that it's very cinematic, and I think that it has legs in terms of its story. And for me, it's just about getting the word out. I'm not an expert on Congo, but I'm an expert on the book. So that's the way I'm going to do it. Um, I I don't know. What are you doing around Congo next? What's next for you?
Well, some of the work that has been really most exciting for me personally has been a lot of very kind of data driven, get deep in the weeds and try and understand what some of the dynamics are in order to know what the right interventions might be. So we sort of took this turn into data collection at the level of the community. And we started out in 2016 with this really involved household survey that we did in southern South Kivu, from like Uvira down to Talama, which is like the border with the next province, Tanganyika province. And we went from household to household, and we asked all kinds of questions about people's experiences, how they identified problems. We asked about health indicators, but we also asked about education. We asked about, socioeconomics, job prospects. How did people earn? Did people have enough to eat? And we also interviewed local chiefs all the way along. And what emerged was this incredibly complicated, kind of interwoven map of all of these different kinds of issues, but also with the emphasis and directionality of the communities themselves, saying these are the things that we think are the most important, and to hear from people on the ground what they felt the right first steps were. So for us, a lot of the work we've been doing has been just kind of going back to these kind of first principles and allowing people to speak for themselves, and then trying to figure out ways where we can get those data out and appreciated and acted upon by, some of the larger aid agencies, how to understand the security dynamics, things like that. So that's something that we've been doing a lot of over the past number of years.
And so are you finding that people who are out in the rural areas are more in danger of being food insolvent, or like battling poverty, or what are you finding?
So there are some really significant divides, right? And that are also true in lots of countries, including ours. But you see a big distinction between, the very large cities in Congo and the kind of, dynamics that exist within these bigger cities versus these rural areas that happen to be, in these sort of transboundary, really, unstable, where rebel groups continue to exist, etc. Those communities, are battling many different dynamics.
Sure.
And so, we were able to see through our household surveys, for example, kind of what was driving some of these food insecurity issues. And it turned out, right, that there were rebel groups that were occupying a certain place on the Moyen Plateau, sort of the mid-level of these high mountains that are in the eastern Congo. And so women, to go up to their shambas where they're planting, they were a great risk. And so if men went up, they could be beaten or killed. If women went up, they could get raped. And so there was, kind of less agricultural production that was occurring because there was this, increase in military group activity. And at the same time, we had just experienced the egress of all of these refugees out of Burundi that happened, in 2015. So we had more mouths to feed because there were a lot of refugees present in the area. There was less food. And so there were all these kinds of pressures. But to kind of counteract that negative story, we also saw, household after household that literally willingly took in Burundian refugees to live with them. So these are refugees outside of the UNHCR kind of IOM formal refugee system, not in these refugee camps that had been established. And it's because Congolese people in that region, had been displaced or refugees themselves, and they were prepared, right, to share and open their homes to other people who were going through that same, circumstance. So
isn't that amazing?
It is, and the sort of the profound generosity of people
Right.
who have very little. We saw that again and again. So it's, so it's very clear, right? There are parts of Congo, there are provinces and areas in Congo that continue to be incredibly insecure and incredibly poor. But there are also other places in the Congo that are not like that don't have the same security issues. you have, regions in Equator province that are profoundly poor but don't have the same issues of, military groups. It's a huge country, as you know, and so it's quite heterogeneous and complicated.
Yeah.
So should we open it up to see if there are any questions in the audience? If you look down, there's a little sentence that says ask a question. If people would like to ask questions, if you can, just click on that and type out your question, then I'll be able to read it. And in the meantime, I wanted to ask Mindy what your personal favorite part of your book is. Is there a section or a scene or a character or a moment that really resonates the most for you?
There is actually. So my favorite character in the whole book, well, okay, I should say something about writers, and I know that there are writers on this call because I see them. I see Marianne Lonsdale, who's a friend of mine. When you write fiction, you fall in love with every character that you write. Each character, even the most detestable, horrific, violent person, is part of you. So so I don't like to play favorites really, but I do have a little bit of a love affair with Mr. Muhangi. Mr. Muhangi is a very special character. He was taken in by Therese's family like many, many years ago when his wife passed away. And he was the teacher. He was Therese's father's teacher when he went to school in the church on the Long Road, which is where the story is basically set. It's where her village is. Mm-hmm. And Mr. Muhangi he's old, like at the beginning of the book, right? And Therese is only 11. And he's just older and older and he's just like different kinds of old. And he's described as like, he looks like a raisin, like he's brown like a raisin, and his eyes completely disappear into his face when he smiles because he smiles so big. And as he ages, he gets really crotchety, and he's really a character, and he's very protective of the house of God, and he doesn't let anyone get away with anything. So yeah, I love him, and actually I am a terrible artist, but I could totally picture him. Like he's this little tiny man, and he has really bad like swollen arthritis knuckles and stuff, and he just, whenever he sees people that he loves, he just has this huge smile that anyway, I could go on forever about Mr. Muhammad.
I found him to be a really appealing, sympathetic character.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
So that leads us to one of our questions from Laura, who says, are the characters based on real people?
Oh, are the characters based on real people? Some, yes. Some, and some are based on characters I saw in situations when I went to Congo. So, like, for example, there's a character who has flaming red hair and she's a Mzunga. She's very, very white, and she's got very bright blue eyes and wears glasses. And when she goes out in the sun, she turns like tomato red. So she stands out like literally like a flame when she's there. So that character actually is based on somebody I met when I was waiting for the slow boat. I'm sure you're familiar with the slow boat across Lake Kivu. I was waiting for the slow boat, and I was waiting at a like a marina, and I was asking this woman who like if there was a bathroom there, and she was just bright red, and she was a German woman from like UNICEF or something. But I really loved her look because she totally stood out like among Congolese people. So she became someone named Amy, who by the way is not named after you. It's your anyway. It's just a good 1970s name. So anyway, so yes, there are characters who are based on characters, but I never associate their actual name with their actual, like their real life name with the real life character. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so Laurel asks, "Hey Mindy, how did you find the process of publishing a book during a pandemic?"
Oh, great question. This Laurel must be really thinking on her toes. So actually, I think publishing a book during a pandemic is fantastic. And it's I have to say, you know, like going into the pandemic was way harder for me than being in the pandemic. And I know I'm speaking very selfishly, but for me, like being here in my cozy house with my family, with both of my sons and my husband around me in a quiet place where I can write is a great place to write. It's also a great place to go on book tour. And so, um, you know, the actual publishing um, was not easy. It was not easy to publish a book. It took me 5 years to even get a publisher's eyes on the book. I don't have an agent. I represented myself. Um, and I guess this might be a good time to do some entertainment for all the people out there. If you'll indulge me, I'll show you how hard it was to publish this book. Okay. All right. So, how was it that I published this book? Query Tracker 101. See these little lines? These are like agents who I sent my book to, okay? And the dates and what I sent them and like what they said. And everything in this little part right here says crickets or rejected. Okay. So, this is what we call the money shot here. So, see all these are all the agents. I was told I was supposed to be rejected 100 times. Okay, so these yellow parts are publishers, right? So I'm still querying agents, querying. Okay, I don't know if you can really see this. It's like 9 feet long. So that was before the pandemic. And what happened was that I was like, wow, I don't think agents really give a shit about people in Congo. Like they really don't care. Oh, I said a curse word. I'm sorry.
You're
Anyway,
allowed. You're allowed.
So basically I was just like, well, nobody cares about Congo. Maybe people aren't putting out books right now, you know? And so I got a friend of mine said to me, well, why don't you ask a publisher? So the very first publisher I asked was the people who made the book, the Permanent Press. And like that, they were just like really interested in the book. And what's crazy is that, you know, it was like 2 weeks before the pandemic. And they picked up the book and they were like, we want to publish this, you know, how's October? And I'm like, sure, good. Yeah, I like this idea. I've been working on this for 10 years. And it's been awesome. Like they got behind the book. They turned it around. You know, we wrote and rewrote as we do when we have a book coming out. And it they published it and it came out in October. And, you know, I was psyched already. And then, you know, horrible things were happening during the summer. George Floyd was killed and Black Lives Matter became even stronger and more vocal. And with it, my book became more popular. And it didn't really matter that it was written by a Mazunga or, whatever, I'm Whitey, whatever you want to call me, like the fact that it paints a favorable picture of African people. And during this pandemic, this is the kind of book we need right now. And these are the kind of books that people want to read right now. And people like the book, and I'm getting good reviews. And so, as horrible as it is to say that I've benefited, or I guess I should say people of Congo have benefited from the fact that I published this book during a pandemic. But I think that when the focus has now become on people of color and women, I mean, this is a hot topic right now. So it's an exciting book, and it hasn't been too bad.
Well, I mean, I think we know that, out of bad things come, good things, come interesting things, come new opportunities and pathways. And so it may have just been, as well, that it was, that there were a series of themes, that people had opportunities in a way to reflect on some of this in a way that when, everyone pre-pandemic was in their, rat race, habits and schedules, of 1 year ago. But, it's great for you and it's great for the book. So I'm happy for you. I'm going to ask you a couple more questions to continue from the, on the theme of the book itself. Marianne has asked, the cover art is stunning. How and where did that come from?
So what's interesting is the cover art. I mean, anybody who doesn't have it, you should get it. You should get it from Barbara's bookstore. You'll get a signed copy for 10% off. So this is the cover, and it was created. Sorry, it's a little glary, but it's a woman, and in the foreground there's a
okay though.
There's a soldier. So I appreciate the comment, and what's really interesting is. So the Permanent Press has a cover artist who does all of their covers. And, I had this great idea that there was going to be this cover art, with a woman's hands, opening toward heaven and all this stuff. And in his wonderful, he has a wonderful vision, had a wonderful vision, but the owner of the Permanent Press, who recently passed away, Marty Shepard, actually was really adamant that this be the cover art. And Lon Kirshner is their cover artist, and he created it. It's actually a picture from a woman who's in a Congolese market, and I actually don't even know where the soldier is from, but it gets the point across. And when I saw it, I was a little bit shocked. I was just like, oh my gosh, it's such a serious cover. But I guess it's a serious book, right? So
it is a serious book with some pretty serious themes. So
it is.
It deserves it.
I guess. I don't know. I kind of love the cover, and so I'll take that compliment for Lon Kirshner, and recommend that anybody who's got a book coming out look him up, because he's pretty awesome.
Great. So Nicole asks, does Mindy feel hope for the future of rural villagers in the Congo, especially women and girls? If so, what gives you hope? If not, why not?
Like we were saying before, you have to be hopeful. Otherwise, you really feel like anything that you've done to further causes for girls and women there is just sort of like a drop in the ocean, right? So I do have hope. I do, and I think that I don't think it's for lack of strength or like personal fortitude that women are like not succeeding there. You know what I mean? And it's not it the measure of success is not it's not quite it's different, you know, like here in the US, like if you're given the opportunity and you have an education, you know, and you have a dream, you know, you can kind of succeed in generally speaking, unless you have grinding poverty like you have in the rural areas, even in the US, right? So I mean, I think that as long as there's compassion out there, I have hope, right? But as you said, people in rural Congo are really, they're really in danger all the time. You know, like I feel their peril. And so I don't know. I guess I have to ask you that, Amy. What do you think? Do you have hope for people in rural Congo? Women?
I do. I think that um, that the problems are incredibly complex, and I think that we have to act at many levels. Um, I I think that to kind of talk about some current events that
Right.
that where Congo is incredibly implicated in this. If anybody has tracked the kind of Dan Gertler and temporary license issued by the outgoing Trump administration. So just to kind of frame this, this person is kind of at the center of, grand corruption. Okay. And so if we think of like what are the forces and factors that create these very unstable, very unequal, dangerous conditions in certain parts of the country, as well as just fail on the fundamentals of service provision for Congolese citizens. Okay, one major problem is that within the mining industry in general, this person who kind of stands at the center of, you know, uh, the benefits and the resources being siphoned out to others rather than the payment of taxes and the payment of royalties and fair deals being executed and having that money like ultimately go into the Congolese treasury. The kind of actions over the past couple of months, for me have been actually kind of exciting and empowering because, there is a policy that I was the right one from the U.S. government about the Magnitsky Act and sanctioning this person. Then there was like this dramatic moment where it looked like he was going to get off the hook in the waning days of the Trump administration. And then a lot of different types of people who, including Congolese activists, including US activists, including European activists, and people who come from, a lot of different parts of this ecosystem sort of band together and said, this guy is really bad, right?
Love it. Yeah.
You have to pull that license back. And it happened. And so just the fact that we were able to undo that bad step, for me, it's like some momentum, so some positive momentum. And it also is like, okay, and now we have some more international attention on Congo. So how can we use that momentum of what's just happened to draw more different, vantage points and people's attention, to, be willing to look at some of these complex issues.
Right.
So, it's like you do what you can, and you maybe as an individual you are taking this little piece, but then you can kind of pull back and kind of look at how all of these pieces fit together. And for me, those kind of actions of the past couple of months were, a reminder that we can actually all come together and make something better happen instead of something worse.
That is a great answer. Do we have other questions in the chat?
We have Lisa has asked, what are your hopes for this book? I think you mentioned some of them, that you'd like to make a film.
Yes, I'd love to make
more things that you would like, to emanate from this book, this experience.
Okay, so to answer your question, in this book, which of course I should mention again that you should buy at Barbara's bookstore for 10% off for a signed copy, there is a whole list of things on the last page where it says how you can help people in Congo. And I'm finding that people who read the book actually read it cover to cover. And I hope that more people will do that, because it tells people how to help people in Congo. And I mean, some of them go all out. I have a friend who donated to Human Rights Watch. I had a friend who picked up King Leopold's ghost and, donated to the Lake Tanganyika floating health clinic. And it's just to me, it's like, you can read a book like this and be like, oh man, what a bummer for people in Congo. That sucks. And then be like, I'm just going to use this book as a coaster over here, but like, if it actually moves people to action and actually help, like, that actually does help. Not everybody is crazy enough like you or like me to get on an airplane and go jetting off to the Democratic Republic of Congo, because it's a war zone, for God's sake, right? But you can do something from the comfort of your own home. You could watch the City of Joy movie, you could watch the Virunga film. And I think that's the idea is, if people do that, then we're not living in our own little bubble all the time. The other thing, I'm hoping for the book is that people will review it on Amazon, even if they buy it from Barbara's bookstore. Any reviews you write will help. So I thought I'd, just sort of throw that in there. Because the more people reading the book, the better it is for people in Congo, the better it is for humanitarians like my cousin Amy. So, yeah.
So we have come to the end of our questions.
Oh, I got one for you.
Okay.
Okay. Here's the big matzo ball.
Okay.
So, first of all, how did you become interested in this region of the world? And the follow-up to that is, why did you decide to sort of like dedicate your professional life to helping people there?
Okay. Well, so I can tell you that from the time that I was an adolescent, I was actually quite interested in post-colonial African politics and African literature. I went to boarding school. I had some friends actually at boarding school from East and Southern Africa, and decidedly not fancy people. Okay. One of my friends was kind of discovered by a trustee of the school who was on safari, read about her performance in the national exams, and so drove out to her village in central Kenya, where she grew up in a house that didn't, have electricity or running water, and said, would you like to go to this school? So, she and I were very close friends, and we're still close friends today. And so we, we're really immersed in thinking about some of these kind of post-colonial political, social, issues. And in particular, I was just fascinated with the DRC because the history of the Congo, from, King Leopold to the Belgians taking over, to Mobutu Sese Seko, to the, First and Second Congo Wars. My view is, the world is a complex place. There are a lot of bad things that happen. There are a lot of good things that happen. But for me, Congo, the sheer amount of suffering of Congo, and also how interesting and crucial the country is, for the rest of the world, for geopolitical issues. It's just been outstanding for me as a place that has experienced untold suffering, but also has all of these surprising, kind of beautiful, interesting, strategic things about it. And so I find it to be an endlessly compelling and fascinating place. And so for me, my interest in the African Great Lakes and in some of the political dynamics, as well as things having to do with human service, it's just a place that holds, tremendous, interest and draw for me. And I just took a kind of a personal detour where I thought, okay, well, I could follow a certain kind of pathway of human service that was more conventional in Chicago as like a specialized surgeon in Chicago, or I could do this other thing that a lot of people are not lining up to do necessarily. And so I chose the latter.
Yeah, me too. I get it. I get it. It's like, it isn't like Everest because it's there. Obviously there's something.
It's not because it's there. It's not.
Yeah.
That's not the reason. It's because the more you look, the deeper it is, the more there is to see, and that's, so people ask me, why do you do what you do? And I was like, well, I can tell you it's very hard, but I'm never ever bored. I'm not an idle person. I like, challenges. I like, complexity. So, we we gel well together, the Congo and I.
I get it. Yes, I feel you. Yeah.
Okay, so is there anybody else out there that would like to ask a question before we begin to wrap things up for the evening?
I guess I should ask you what's next for you. We could talk about what's next for both of us. Yeah, what's next for you?
Well, so what's next for you?
Okay. All right, we'll come back and ask. Okay. What's next for me is I'm writing a memoir right now. I'm writing an ALS memoir, and that's, like you, I'm delving into something that's not so easy, but I really feel like as you scrape the surface, there's more to see. So that's what I'm working on. What are you working on?
Well, so my main project right now is that my organization has created a technology that has digitalized all of the paper records that are used in health centers in the Congo. So we're in the process of kind of finishing this app and working on scaling the availability of this technology in health centers around Congo. And so some of my recent trips that I made, I did some pandemic traveling, and I went to Kinshasa, and I did a full tech demo with some of my employees who are based in Kalemi, which is on Lake Tanganyika. We did a tech demo to this new digital agency, which is a branch of the Ministry of Health. It's called the ANICIS, and it is looking at digital infrastructure and digital tools for the health sector. And so it was very exciting. They love the technology that we've created. And so we're now working to, make that technology more available, because it then goes back to this idea of like, facts, data, what's actually happening. What are the cases? What are communities suffering from? What do they care about? And so it's a tool that will enable us to significantly increase our capacity to have that information in places all over the country.
Well, it sounds easy. I mean, just no big deal. What did you do today? Oh, I walked the dog. What did you do today? Oh, I put in a whole digital system in the Democratic Republic of the Congo to digitize all of the health stuff. Just every day, another day in the life of my cousin Amy.
It certainly wasn't a day.
Anyway, it is absolutely a pleasure to connect with you, Amy. And I just am so happy that you could be here with me. I know that you're sort of getting over jet lag from being in Congo last week, and it's a special week because it's International Women's Day week, month, year, millennium, and I'm just very pleased that you could be here, and I'm so happy that Barbara's Bookstore had us, and I thank everybody here for joining us tonight.
And I'm honored that you invited me. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. And as you guys can see in the chat, you guys can, share this replay with all of your friends and family. And, you can promote the Lake Tanganyika Floating Health Clinic or Unnatural Resources or Barbara's Bookstore in any way you would like.
Or all of them.
Or all of it. We're shamelessly self-promoting. Anyway, I really just wanted to say thank you again. And I think that probably wraps it up for tonight. Do you feel as though everything that needs to be said can be said? Are we good to go?
I guess we're good to go.
I guess we're good.
We can call it a wrap for the evening.
We're going to call it a wrap. And I will say, let me see if I can remember this. Is it Missouri Sana?
Well, you can say that our event was Missouri Sana. It was very good.
It was very good. And
we can say kwaheri, which is bye.
Bye. Thank you so much, everybody.